Every time I meet parents at a childcare, I hear the same conversation. This place is so good. They teach colors, shapes, reading on time, counting on time. And the parents are proud. They should be. But while they are talking, I'm watching the children. One is pushing another off a chair. One is pulling a toy straight out of someone's hands. One is standing alone in a corner, too shy to say a single word, slowly closing off from the world. But I never hear them say, my child learned how to ask for help today. My son learned how to clean up after himself. My daughter learned how to say no and protect her boundaries. Those are just a fragment of what can be taught, and most of the time it is left to chance, when it has to be taught and practiced daily. Even something as simple as asking for help is explained once or twice and then forgotten. A child needs to be reminded constantly until it becomes something that is not shameful to do. And if it is not learned in childhood, it is very difficult to teach that later, and it complicates the same child's life as an adult. There is natural order to how children develop. It has nothing to do with the school calendar. It does not start in September and end in June. The child's development does not stop when the academic year is over, and almost nobody talks about the fact that it has to be available to children as new developmental needs arise. This is what I mean by the natural developmental order: physical development, emotional development, personality development, then real life skills, which is a whole set on its own: self care, caring for your environment, communication, time management, and more. And then academics, placed on top of all those layers, not used as a replacement for them. Developmental order means something simple. A child cannot use a higher skill well when the foundation underneath it is missing. A child cannot focus on reading if the body is restless, the emotions are overwhelmed, and the child already believes I am bad at this. This does not mean children develop like machines, one perfect step at a time. Development is alive, and all the layers affect each other. But when a child meets a new challenge, the same order keeps showing up. Each layer builds on the one before it. Physical development makes focus possible, emotional safety allows real effort, personality carries the practice, real life skills grow into independence, and only then can academics feel meaningful instead of forced. Skip a layer, and everything that comes after becomes way harder than it needs to be, which means education is an important piece, but is not the foundation by itself. It becomes the closing piece of each developmental cycle after the child has enough readiness to use it. So the goal is not to remove academics. The goal is to stop forcing academics to replace development. Development comes first. Academics grow from it. So let me be precise about what the real problem is. The problem is academic pressure before developmental readiness, because academics require the very skills that development is supposed to build. Reading requires attention, writing requires fine motor skills, math requires patience, science requires curiosity, practice requires discipline, learning from mistakes requires emotional safety, and solving a problem requires enough confidence to try again after getting something wrong. In research, many of the skills are called executive function and self regulation. In simple parent language, this is the child's inner control system, the ability to pay attention, manage impulses, remember instructions, make decisions, plan ahead, and keep going toward a goal. Without that inner control system, academics become much harder than they need to be. So when we skip development, we are not preparing a child for education. We are asking education to repair what should have been built before education began. And this does not mean a child should be kept away from books, numbers, or letters. It means academics should be introduced through readiness, interest, play, movement, and real need, not through pressure, shame, and forced performance. The solution is developmental cycle. Build the body, steady the emotions, shape the personality, practice the real life skills, and then connect academics to readiness through interest. Let me walk through each layer one at a time. It starts with the body. Physical development does not just build a stronger body. A child who climbs, runs, kicks a ball, builds something with their own hands is learning to take risks, to win and lose, to try again after failing. Movement is not a break from learning. Movement is how a child becomes ready to learn. And this is not just philosophy. Physical activity supports attention, memory, mood, coordination, and learning. So when movement is taken away and a child is asked to focus anyway, we are working against the body instead of with it. A child who cannot sit still is usually not misbehaving. The child simply has a body that needs to move before it can focus. After the body comes emotion. Before a child can sit and learn anything, they need to be able to manage frustration, to wait, to lose a game and come back tomorrow, to ask for help without feeling ashamed. A child who loses a board game and learns to shake hands instead of flipping the table is developing. Because fear blocks learning, anxiety blocks learning. A math page cannot comfort a child, and a grade cannot build self worth. Then comes personality, patience, curiosity, confidence, resilience. None of it arrives on its own. A child does not become responsible because an adult says, be responsible. A child becomes responsible by being trusted with something real, as simple as cleaning up after himself, confident by doing hard things and surviving the discomfort. Then come the real life skills, the ones we just named. A child packs their own bag. A child plans their own afternoon. A child cleans up their own mess. That is how the skills get built. These are not soft skills. They predict how well a person does in life more powerfully than IQ, more than family income, because adult life is not multiple choice test. It asks different questions. Can you handle pressure? Can you work with people? Can you recover after failing? And none of these skills arrive by accident. They have to be taught on purpose and practiced every day until they become a routine, then a habit, then second nature. Even research on social and emotional learning keeps pointing in the same direction. When children are taught emotional regulation, cooperation, problem solving, and responsible decision making, academics improve too. Development is not a distraction from education. Development is what makes education work. That is when academics finally have somewhere to land. When math is finally on the table, the child is not sitting there wondering why nobody made breakfast, why their stomach hurts, why they smell bad, and why they feel embarrassed because nobody taught them how to take care of their body, or why the child next to them keeps humiliating them when no adult is watching. All of that is already taken care of. The child is ready to learn. Now, here's the part almost everyone misses. The developmental order is not a staircase you climb once and leave behind it. It is a cycle, and it never stops. It keeps going for a lifetime, unless a person stops growing and starts repeating the same unfinished patterns. Watch it in the smallest possible moment. A child opens a book. The adult wants the child to notice the letters. But the child is fascinated by turning the page again and again, over and over. To adult, it can look pointless. It is not pointless. The child is building muscle and brain connections, coordination, fine motor skills, learning to be patient, learning to be goal oriented, learning to finish a task, even one as simple as turning a page. And only when all of that is satisfied does the child finally get curious about the marks on the paper and ask, what does that mean? Are those letters? That is the moment academics belong, born from readiness, because play is not empty time. Play is where children practice movement, attention, social rules, language, problem solving, emotional control, and persistence without feeling like they are being tested every second. That whole sequence, from the body to focus to curiosity to letters, just ran inside one quiet moment. And it will run again with the next page, the next skill, the next challenge. Every time a child meets something new, development starts again from the body and moves through the same order. That is why it never stops. It runs through childhood, through the teenage years, through adult life, because self development never stops. The cycle does not care what grade a child is in, it only cares whether the foundation underneath the new lesson was built. Finland gives us one useful example. Formal academic pressure does not need to begin as early as many people think. In Finland, comprehensive school begins at age 7, after years of early childhood education built around play, cooperation, communication, movement, and readiness. Children there are still learning before 7. They are just not being pressured to perform. The point is not that every country should copy Finland exactly. The point is simpler. When the foundation is respected, academics do not suffer. They become easier to build. So, what happens when the order gets skipped? A 5-year-old who was never taught to share, to wait, to manage frustration, or ask for help is placed in a room with 20 other children and expected to follow instructions for 7 hours. That is not a realistic expectation. That is a setup for failure. And when it fails, everyone gets blamed. The teacher is overwhelmed, the parent is frustrated, the child gets labeled. But no one is actually the enemy. The order was skipped, and nobody was ever shown that there was an alternative way that follows the natural developmental order. This is where the quiet damage starts. When a child says, I hate school, that is not always laziness. Sometimes it means that child has already started connecting learning with pressure, shame, boredom, and failure. When a child says, I am stupid, that is not a fact. That is a child measuring the entire worth by a grade on a piece of paper. That is not a healthy education. That is damage wearing the mask of education. And it shows up later as a teenager whose emotions swing without warning. Anger 1 minute, withdrawal the next, defiance after that. Not because something is wrong with the teenager, because nobody helped build the emotional skills to handle what growing up actually feels like. And this is not rare. We see it in rising anxiety, school avoidance, emotional shutdown, and the mental health warnings showing up across childhood and adulthood. According to CDC data, the suicide rate among young people ages 10 to 24 rose 62% from 2007 through 2021. It does not end at 18 either. There are plenty of educated adults who struggle to hold a job, build a career, keep a relationship, or carry the weight of an ordinary day. Not because they lack knowledge, but because parts of the developmental foundation were never built. This is not a parenting failure, and it is not a teaching failure. It is the developmental order that most of the time is being skipped, which means it can be fixed. The answer is not more studying, and it is not less school. The answer is to run the developmental cycle in the right order on purpose. What is needed is one clear process, simple, practical, something a child can actually understand and practice on their own. A process that takes a child from physical readiness to emotional strength to personality and real life skills, and then to academic learning with named steps in a sequence a child can see, practice, and own, affordable to every family. That is what we are building right now at Self Development Systems. Because when children become independent, they stop needing to be managed minute by minute. Parents get their time back, teachers get their one on one time with children back. Everyone finally gets room to breathe. Education is the last piece of development, not because education isn't important, but because education only works properly when the foundation underneath it is strong enough to carry it. So maybe the question is not how do we improve education? Maybe the question is which part of development is still missing? If this matters to you, if you feel that something is off about how children are being taught, help it reach the parents and teachers. Follow the channel, leave a comment, share the video. Every voice counts. If not us, if not now, then who will do what had to be done a long time ago? Less pressure, more self development. Thank you, and see you soon.